Welcome. I'm so glad you're here for this explainer. Today, we are diving right into Unit 05, Lesson 02, Ethics, Application Task Video Overview. We've got a lot of ground to cover, and honestly, this is some of the most fascinating stuff in the tech world right now. We're putting on our investigator hats and really digging into the ethics of artificial intelligence. Here's our game plan for today. 1. The automation ethics myth. 2. Global frameworks and evidence. 3. Application, the learning AI. And finally, 4. Transfer check. Changing contexts. All right, let's jump straight into part 1, the automation ethics myth. Okay, we need to start by totally dismantling a pretty dangerous assumption out there. You've probably heard these common AI myths, the idea that technical success is the exact same thing as ethical success, or that just because a process is automated, it's somehow magically fair. Or maybe the worst one, that a single metric can settle all the complex questions about a tool's impact. Let me ask you this. If an AI scores a perfect 100% on a math or coding test, does that automatically mean it's ethical? It's so tempting to think, hey, it's just math, it's objective, right? Well, actually, scratch that. It's a total trap. So here is the reality check. The myth is that automation guarantees fairness and ethics. But the reality? AI always requires human oversight, governance, and responsibility. Just because a machine spits out an answer doesn't mean fairness is baked in. A technically successful output is absolutely not guaranteed to be an ethical one. No single metric and really no single person can fully capture a technology's massive impact on society. At the end of the day, human responsibility is literally the most crucial piece of this whole puzzle. Which brings us perfectly to part 2, global frameworks and evidence. Since we know automatic fairness is a total myth, we kind of need a rule book, right? Well, let's look at the heavy hitters of global AI governance and how they map out specific human-centered values. First, we have NIST. They put out the AI Risk Management Framework, which is all about figuring out how to navigate and manage risks to everyday people in society as a whole. Then you have the OECD. Their AI principles really hammer home transparency and explainability, making sure these systems actually respect democratic values. And then there's UNESCO. They take a hard stance on proportionality and do no harm, explicitly putting human rights right at the center of the conversation. Now, these aren't just corporate buzzwords. These are highly structured, globally recognized principles built to handle the real-world impacts of AI. And there's one specific idea I want to highlight. Check out this quote directly from the UNESCO recommendation on the ethics of AI. It says, "Member states should ensure that AI systems do not displace ultimate human responsibility and accountability." Let that sink in for a second. That is absolutely crucial. It proves that no matter how autonomous, how adaptive, or how incredibly smart an AI system seems to get, we humans are always on the hook. You simply cannot outsource ethical accountability to a server. No way. But, and this is a big but, we have to be realistic about what these frameworks actually are. They are voluntary, they do not guarantee perfect automatic outcomes, and they certainly don't replace human responsibility. NIST, the OECD, UNESCO, these documents don't just magically make the hard choices for you. Think of them as playbooks. They guide us, sure, but they require our active, ongoing human judgment to actually mean anything in the real world. All right, moving right along to part 3, application. The learning AI. Before we look at a specific scenario, let's make sure we're on the same page about what we're even evaluating. According to the OECD, an AI system is a machine-based system that infers from input how to generate outputs, like predictions, content, or recommendations. Look at that flow. It takes data in, it infers some kind of pattern, and then it generates an output that influences the world. Keep that 3-step process in the back of your mind as we dive into our case study. So, here are your marching orders. When we evaluate an AI scenario today, we're going to use a 4-step framework. Step 1, identify the data or the model. Step 2, identify the output. Step 3, name a limitation. And step 4, state the human check. It's a super logical way to break down exactly how a system works and figure out where the safety rails need to go. Let's try it out with a scenario pulled straight from the UNESCO text. Imagine a tailored learning AI. The primary stakeholders here, the people whose lives are actually affected, are students and teachers. So, the AI takes inputs, like a student's past test scores or learning habits, infers a pattern, and generates an output. In this case, custom educational recommendations. Now, on the surface, opening up access to hyper-personalized learning sounds fantastic, right? But as ethical investigators, we know we have to dig a little deeper. Let's run our scenario analysis. First up, the risk. Well, if you rely entirely on the AI's output, you could easily introduce bias or unfairness, especially if the historical data it learned from was already flawed. Then, what's the limitation? UNESCO points out a really tricky tension here: the pull between explainability and privacy. We absolutely want to know how the AI decided on a specific learning path. We want transparency. But at the same time, we have to fiercely protect that student's fundamental right to data privacy. It's a tough balancing act. So, what is the required human check to keep this safe? Teacher oversight. A real live human teacher has to review these recommendations to make sure they're fair, beneficial, and accurate. That right there is the ultimate human accountability the global frameworks are talking about. Okay, let's wrap things up with part 4, transfer check, changing contexts. This is where we really test your mastery. We're going to completely shift the context. Context 1 was our tailored learning AI, right? The stakeholder was a student. But what happens if we shift to context 2, a healthcare diagnostic AI, where the stakeholder is a medical patient? The UNESCO text talks about how AI is being used to facilitate diagnoses and treatments. So I want you to think about this. How do the risks and the safeguards we just talked about change when you go from a student in a classroom to a vulnerable patient in a hospital bed? Well, obviously, the ethical application has to adapt instantly. In a healthcare context shift, the stakes for safety go through the roof. That UNESCO principle of do no harm, it suddenly becomes a matter of life and death, of potential physical harm. Plus, you need intensely stricter data privacy for sensitive medical records. So our human check has to scale up too. A teacher checking a lesson plan is great, but now we require strict, rigorous medical expert oversight. A doctor absolutely must verify that diagnosis. It's the same basic AI mechanism, but the context demands a massively different level of human determination. So, as we close out today's explainer, I want to leave you with a question to chew on. As AI inevitably evolves and gets even more complex, how will you ensure that you remain the ultimate human check? The tech is going to keep racing forward for sure, but as we've seen from our frameworks today, the final responsibility for how these systems impact our rights and our society, it always comes back to us. I really encourage you to think deeply about your own active role as a critical evaluator of the technology around you. Thanks so much for joining me today for Unit 05, Lesson 02, Ethics, Application Task Video Overview.